class, we are going to be making no-bake cookies. So I know you can't see as much of my counter as normal because we're going to be using the stove, and I wanted you to be able to see the stove as well. So I'm going to do the best I can to make sure you can see everything that I'm doing, but you'll also have the recipe posted once this video is done to follow as, in addition. Okay, so no-bake cookies are called no-bake cookies because they do not go in the oven, but you do still have to do some cooking. So that's what I mean when we are going to say we're using the stove. So little kids, work with your parents to make sure you're safe when using the stove. So I'm going to be using this pot to make my no-bake cookies. You are going to want to use a semi-big pot because you're going to add some ingredients at first, which aren't going to be that much to melt, but then you're going to end up adding all the ingredients into this one pot. So you're going to want to have some space to mix everything up. Okay, so we're going to turn our stove on to, I'm going to do medium high, and I'm going to turn it on right now so we can get warming up. Okay, so then in our pot, I'm gonna put the pot on the stove right now as well so that it can be heating up too. We are gonna melt 3 ingredients. We're gonna put in our butter, our sugar, our butter, and our cocoa powder. So I'm gonna put this on the stove. Now, you need half a cup butter, which is this entire stick of butter. This is a half a cup. Okay, so just gonna make sure, yep. Okay, so we're gonna cut it up into pieces so that it's easier to melt. So take your whole, this is unsalted butter, but if all you have is salted, honestly, I would just go for it. Okay, so I'm putting on a little cutting board, and then I'm just gonna cut it into little pieces so you can see that. And I'm gonna take these little pieces as I cut them and put them into the pot. Okay? So normally you would do this over by the pot, right? But I'm trying to help you be able to see. So maybe I'll just do it back here. Can you see this? Probably can't see my head. Okay, so I know you can't see my head while I'm back there, but hopefully you saw me cutting up all of the pieces and then putting each piece into the pot. So the butter is in there and it's starting to melt already. And then we're gonna add in our sugar. So we need 2 cups of granulated sugar. So you always wanna make sure when you're baking, you always wanna make sure that you're making even measurements. So I have my 1 cup measuring cup, and I'm going to just slide this knife over the top to make sure that it is a nice even 1 cup, and then I'm going to put that in our pot as well. Okay, and we need 2 cups, so I'm going to do that twice. Okay, that's done. Now, our sugar is kind of big where I keep my sugar, so I'm going to take this and move it out of our way. Okay, so that's done. Now we need 1 more ingredient in our pot while we're melting, which is our unsweetened cocoa powder. And you need, let's see, 1/4 of a cup unsweetened cocoa powder. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to use my knife to make sure it's a nice even measurement. Scoop it in there, kind of tap it down, slide across the top to get your even measurement. Okay, so I'm going to kind of bring my pot back and forth so you can see inside, but I am going to also try to leave it on the stove as much as possible so that everything will melt. Okay, so I'm going to use this cookie sheet temporarily. Okay, so I have just put everything in the pot, right? So now I'm going to take my spatula and I'm going to mix everything up. So normally, if you're you and you're at home, do this on the stove, okay? You don't need to take it off the stove. This is just so you can see. So now I'm going to put this back on the stove so it doesn't get too cool. Okay, so we need to get that to what's called a roiling boil, which is a super boil. It is boiling really good and really hard, and then you want to let it boil for 1 minute. Okay, so that's what we're waiting for. So we're going to go ahead and let that melt and get that to a boil. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit right now. Okay, but as you turn the heat up, you want to make sure that you're not letting it burn. So we are going to need to watch it as well as stir it every once in a while. So we can't take our eye off the ball or it will burn. So while that's going, we are going to prepare some other ingredients for our recipe. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take parchment paper, my favorite thing. Now you can use wax paper if that's what you have as well. And we're going to put some on our cookie sheet. Okay? Now this is just preparing your cookie sheet so that when your no-bake cookies are ready, you have somewhere to put your no-bake cookies. Okay? So that's all we need to do. I'm going to put it to the side. Okay, now it's been a second or two, so I'm going to go stir my pot. Okay, I'm going to let that go. Oh, you know what? We forgot one ingredient. I was looking at it and I'm like, this is wrong. We didn't put our milk in, okay? We need to put our milk in the pot as well. And we need a half of a cup of milk. I mean, obviously I made these pour. I was like, this is not looking correct. Okay, half a cup of milk in the pot. Okay, that will help it come to a boil, clearly, because it is a liquid. So that would be nice. I'm going to put the milk back in the fridge. And then I'm going to stir my pot again. Okay, so this is looking a lot better. This is what it's supposed to look like. Hopefully you can see that. I know it's chocolatey in there, so it's dark, and the pot is dark, but it's like a liquidy mix. Okay, perfect. So that's looking a lot better. Now we are going to still continue to prepare our other ingredients, okay? So when that pot comes off the stove, we're going to add in some other ingredients to it, and it's nice to be able to do that really quickly because we want the mix to be as hot as possible when we're adding in our other ingredients. So having them pre-measured and ready to go really helps with this recipe. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pre-measure our ingredients right now so they're ready to go. Okay, so I can already hear it starting to bubble. We got to hurry. Okay, so we need a half of a cup creamy peanut butter. Okay, so I have my half a cup measurement here. My peanut butter. I'm going to grab a spoon. All right, and now we can measure our peanut butter into the half a cup container. Whoops, that's okay if you spill a little. I always spill. Okay, so we have our half a cup peanut butter, so that's good. Then our next ingredient is vanilla. So we're not going to pre-measure that. We're just going to do vanilla. And then what I like to do is put what my measurement is next to it. So we need 2 teaspoons. So I've got my vanilla, my 2 teaspoons right next to it. And you can't see the peanut butter. There it is, okay? And then the last ingredient is salt. And we're going to do the same thing, okay? So you need salt, and we're going to do half a teaspoon of salt. So I'll put my half a teaspoon next to it. So now my ingredients are ready to go, and I'm going to stir my pot. Okay, I really wish you could see, I know you can't even see my head. I really wish you could see this because it is a nice bubbling boil, okay, which is what we wanted. That was the whole goal. So I'm just stirring it so it doesn't burn really quickly, but we need to let it boil for 1 minute. Okay, so I just know it's been boiling for a little bit because I could hear it, and it had a nice boil when I went over there. So I'm just set my timer for 30 seconds. But when you're watching your pan, you just turn on your timer to 1 minute when it gets to a nice boil. All right, the last thing we're gonna get is I'm gonna get a hot pad to put on my table so that when I take the pot off, I have somewhere that's safe to put it. Okay, so here we go. Now, after we add these ingredients, the vanilla, the salt, and the peanut butter, we are going to add one more ingredient very last, and that is our oats. All right, and we are gonna need 3 cups of oats. So I'm just gonna open up the container, and then I have my 1 cup measuring cup. Can you even see my oats? Here they are, my oats. and then my 1 cup container, and then I'm just gonna use this knife that I've used before. Now, you heard my timer go off, so I'm gonna get our pot and we're gonna keep mixing. Okay, so this is where the speed game comes in. Hopefully, can you see? There we go. Okay, so we're gonna add in peanut butter, right? We pre-measured to make it nice and easy. Add in all the peanut butter. Okay, we don't need this. We're gonna add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. It's already starting to calm down. That's why we do this as fast as we can. Put more liquid in and it starts to boil again. And then we need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Okay, so all of our ingredients are now in. So now we mix. And we just mix until this peanut butter is completely melted. That's the goal. Melt the peanut butter. All right, so mix everything up nice and good. This obviously mixes the vanilla and the salt as well, and it's gonna make a nice creamy mixture. All right, keep mixing until you don't have any lumps. You can probably see I have a couple lumps in there still. So I'm just gonna keep mixing. It's gonna stay hot, which is great. Again, no lumps, that's all we're doing. Stir, stir, stir. Here we go. Okay, when all the lumps are gone, we are gonna be mixing in 3 cups of oats, and that's the last ingredient to this recipe. And then we get to actually form them into cookies, which is the easy and fun part. Okay, so it's looking good. I don't have any lumps in here anymore. So now I'm gonna take my oats, 3 cups. Okay, so again, we do nice, even measurements. Oops. Got a little too much there off the top. Okay, so 1 cup. 2 cups. All right, 3 cups. And I kind of spread them around in the pan. I didn't put them all on top of each other, just because now when I'm mixing it all in, it'll make it a little easier. So now I'm just mixing again until we get all the oats incorporated and they're all covered with chocolate. So these are obviously a chocolate cookie, chocolate flavored cookie. So you want everything to be coated with chocolate. So delicious. Okay, it smells good too. The peanut butter chocolate combination is always yummy. Okay, so now it's 100% incorporated. And we are gonna move our oats just to make a little more space for our next task. Move some of these things out of the way. Okay, I'm gonna move my pot over, and then I'm gonna bring my parchment paper back. Okay, so if you don't have parchment paper, or if you're using, I'm gonna wipe this up so you can see. Let me just get this peanut butter I spilled out of the way. Okay, then I can move my pan down here. Okay, so if you're using something besides parchment paper, I would recommend coating it with cooking spray. Spray it down, because otherwise your items will get stuck, which is kind of hard to get your cookies off. Okay, so now I'm gonna do, now these cookies are hot, right? They just came off the stove. So you don't want to touch them with your hands or you will burn yourself. So I'm gonna use the 2-spoon method to actually make my cookies. So I have a bigger spoon, and the other spoon can be any size you want, okay? So I take a scoop, and then I scoop it off of my spoon with the other spoon onto the parchment paper, all right? That's what we're gonna do for every single one of these until you have all of them on the parchment paper. Now, these are no cook, obviously, but they're not ready to eat right away either. So you have to wait until they cool, because they will harden up and actually become more like a cookie. Right now, it's just kind of like a heated up mess, like a little bit of a glob, and they're not exactly a cookie. So that is the patient part about making a no-bake cookie recipe, is you have to wait for them to cool. Now, if you run out of space, you can obviously do a second parchment paper cookie sheet, which I already can tell you I'm gonna have to do. Okay, so that is the whole process, okay? So I am gonna need to do a second piece of parchment paper to finish my cookies. You can see, I'm sure that there's still some left in here, which I'll do in a minute. But I hope you enjoyed this show, and I hope you enjoy these cookies. Thanks for joining.